Okay, so magic. It's a very interesting and cool thing. So, what I see magic as is simply just the mental control, the intention, and the will controlling reality itself. So, it could be as simple as imagining an apple in your mind that is using mental will. Um, you can think taking from pure nothingness to somethingness, or it could be controlling your arm. For example, your brain controls the nerves, and the nerves then control the muscles. And this allows you to angle and position your arm in three-dimensional geometrical space. I'll talk a little more about that later. The more interesting things that, I'm interested in, and I think most other people, is more on, how do you levitate something with magic, with your mind? How do you set something on fire, or do interesting meta magic and the idea of shielding and barriers and spells and curses and teleportation, portals, and all this kind of fantasy-esque stuff, which I do think has the potential to exist. I should say, I do think it does exist. Whether many people of today's world can do it, that's a bit of a different question, just because the times have changed. But I think as time goes on, we will see through scientific advancement, things like teleportation and portals and matter turning into whatever you want, turning matter into gold and just whatever. So it'd be quite interesting. That's kind of that's more of a what you could technological form of control, but I'm more interested in the actual physical, not physical, but more humanistic, as in a human levitating something through their mind, through their magical abilities. That's more what I'm interested in. There are actually devices. If you look at Sean Hutchison, you look him up on YouTube. He, 30, 40 odd years ago, had videos of through using electromagnetism, levitating objects, pulling metal apart and creating interesting fusion effects. Apparently, he got the metal analyzed in a lab, and I believe they didn't understand, or it had been like elemental combinations and strange elements and all this kind of stuff. Assuming it didn't decay and all that, but just like how you get isotopes of certain things or whatever. So you can actually buy pieces of metal that as I think I said in another video, you can buy pieces of metal that have been basically warped and torn apart through strong electromagnetism and whatever used, and radio waves and all that. So you can do it with technology, and of course the human body is analogous to technology. So the brain is the electromagnetic center, the electromagnetism, the force of electromagnetism, I should say, is the magical force. It is the non-physical kind of pressure mediation force, so to speak. And by that I mean pressure mediation is enhancing pressure, reducing pressure. It's just pressure on space, or what you would call ether, so to speak, and then it creates interesting effects. That's how I see it. And you can see that the physical body or physical bodies themselves, like tables and chairs, are simply just physical manifestations of something. But anyway, so if we have this electromagnetic center in our body, and we have what you would think of the magical veins, which are the nervous system running through the body. If anyone's watched Fate, they know Shiro. He activated they're called the magical veins, or the something like that. Magical circuits, I think. The first thing he did was activate them, which is basically like, I don't know if he made like a fake nervous system or if it was actual nervous system, but basically pathways for this force to flow through your body. Now, usually if you try to levitate something, it doesn't work. Of course, there are videos of people doing it online and tutorials and all this kind of stuff. So you can see that it does exist, because assumably this isn't all fake. It'd be a little bit strange if all these people dedicated their lives to something that was fake and all that, but that does happen, of course. But you can actually see all this stuff. You have people levitation, setting things on fire, just kind of basic magical abilities, so to speak, which is quite interesting. So anyway, the mental control of things, as I said, that's magic. I assume the way that it would be done is through simply focusing on things. For example, like you would focus on a pen or a plate or a bowl or whatever, and you would get comfortability with that, and you would push it. You would push it mentally using mental force. As I said in another video, you can train mental force simply by focusing in the middle of your head. You can enhance it by kind of pressurizing the focus of your head, and yeah, so that builds up mental force. It takes quite a while though, and see, this mental force is the same that basically you use throughout your entire day. Making your body walk or move, or thinking, and even the pressure of the voice is of course it's a physical resonation, but I'm modulating it through magic, through mental force. And the more you kind of kind of get the idea of magic, is the more you'll use it for things. As I guess they said in the old Chinese martial arts and such, eventually you just learn to use energy, they said, to do things instead of using muscular force and all that. So that's an interesting concept. But yes, quite simply, I guess if you want to levitate or push something, you would just push it with your mind, focus on an object and push it. I don't think it would be any more complex than that. Now, why doesn't it work when you try to do it? Because if it were that simple, everyone would do it. Well, maybe it is that simple, but maybe it isn't at the same time. By that I mean maybe we just don't simply have the mental strength. If you are bodybuilding, if you're lifting weights, it takes quite a long time. It takes many, many years to be able to lift heavier and heavier weight. So I would assume that you have to build up the mental strength as well to do these things. Similarly, if you wanted to set something on fire or cause ice to manifest in the atmosphere, you would use temperatures potentially. You would or you could use some kind of spark maybe and cause electricity, which would be through tension in the atmosphere. So from what I hear, the magicians and the wizards and such would actually learn physics, so to speak. They would learn about the elements. For example, what is fire? It's the ignition of volatile gases, essentially. So fire is actually a gas, air, which is a spiritual air, and an ignition of that spiritual air. So I do remember in Barden's book he talked about how fire, you had to have air and fire combined together. So if you were able to produce mentally produce some kind of volatile, what volatile would it be? Who knows? Maybe hydrogen and oxygen together? Excuse me one second. Excuse me for that. Yeah, I imagine you would just kind of naturally figure out whatever, like the purest, whatever the most efficient volatile spirit to ignite would be, and that would be how you would create a fire. Because the fire is almost like a liquid. It acts almost like liquid, or it looks almost like liquid, because it is ignition of that gas. Well, it depends on the fire actually. Some of them are different, and it depends if it's a jet fire and all that. But I imagine it would be something like that where you'd practice. Well, maybe if you wanted to set a piece of paper on fire, excuse me, you would focus on that piece of paper and you would intensify the pressure, the mental focus of heat. You would focus on heat. You would feel heat. Some people say to imagine, like visually imagine a fire, and some people say to feel it. I guess it would, maybe both would work. I don't know. Feeling is more a lower sense, while seeing is a higher sense. Not to say anyone's better or worse or anything. It's just how you rank them. So anyway, I imagine you would focus on paper and intensify. Because I've seen the Qigong masters, they put their hand and they tense it, and they very much use a lot of force to tense and focus that tension. Because a lot of the Qigong masters, they're more physical with their hands and their body, and that's how they deliver force, like a force blast or a pressure push, kind of continuous pressure. I've seen another person do this where they push with their hand, they push it out. I'm wondering, like, because if I push out, I can feel like kind of cold air come out a little bit, which is interesting. And sometimes when I practice martial art a lot, like a punch, you do a specific punch, I kind of punch and like a bit of a little burst of hot air comes. It's very interesting. So I wonder if it's something to do with that, or it's related to that, where you push mentally with that mental force out of your hand, and then eventually, I'm doing it now. I can feel the atmosphere kind of changing, or maybe it's because I'm using energy in my hand, and then the atmosphere is trying to attack me because it's cold. I hope not. That's not so good. But oh, I could have scratched my neck. Hopefully that's not causing you auditory discomfort. Anyway, so yeah, as I said, it's an electromagnetic force. So you're essentially manipulating electromagnetism, which I guess is what kind of, it's if you have it's like static. What do you call it? Kind of like static electricity with styrofoam that sticks to you, which is an interesting thing. Or you make like a, what do you call it? You rub wool on a rod, and you attract balloons or hair or whatever. Maybe there's something like that. But anyway, I don't think thinking too much about the physics is the best way to go about it. More practical is better. So the way that I see it, yeah, you would hold your hand out and you would push mentally with force, and I think you have to hit a very high level of cultivation to do this, which is why I always think, if someone calls himself a Qigong master but they can't force push, they're not really a Qigong master. Just my opinions, at least. I do remember watching these two, I think one was Japanese, maybe one was Chinese, or they were both Japanese Qigong masters, and they would, they circled each other. It was like a competition, like a game show, and one had to push the other over, and they were doing interesting movement, and they're trying to push really hard. There's another school of thought where martial art practice in I don't know, Taiwan, some country around South Asia, where they would use the nape of the belly, and they would pressurize the belly, and then they would push, and they would push people over and all that. Very interesting stuff. Yeah, purely with force. There's Lama Don Drop. Lama. Let me look it up. Lama Don Drop. Don Drop or Don Drop Dorje. Yeah, that's it. Lama Lama. Don Drop Dondrup Dorje Dorje. He really shows it. He says when you are connected to the earth and the heavens, when you've got an energy bubble around you, when the bones are all in place. Basically, when you've hit like a perfect state of physical cultivation, you get this energy bubble around you, supposedly. And then you can like push with the energy bubble, and you can like push people, and because it looks like he engages with people's energetic. Because just say if you could control another person's nervous system, then you can control their body. And seeing as we already, connect with others' nervous systems, and connect with other parts as well. Like, if someone feels an emotion, you can feel it. And empaths are very good at that. For better or for worse, I guess. They can feel a lot of that stuff. So if you could control another person's nerves, or even whatever, just force control them, because I don't want to get too scientific or too bogged down with that. Then yeah, and that's what he seems to do. It's very interesting. He makes people jumpy, like electrocutes them, without even touching them, which is very interesting. And I do believe that stuff's real. So yeah, that's another thing. Anyway, you can kind of understand this magical energy, this electromagnetic energy, by when you do like qigong and energy work and all that, you gather energy to your hand, or you focus on an object, you'll actually see this light, this interesting light. And it's not light like from a light bulb. It's like a hidden, like a cold light or a silent light or something. Where it's just this interesting kind of glow around an object, similar to like a corona discharge from electromagnetic stuff. I think it is a corona discharge actually, and you can see there's some activity there, but yeah, ultimately I think that the acquisition, that word acquiring, of psychic abilities, and which is basically just mental abilities, psychic, mental magic, mental meaning like mental force on things. If you want to do something, you control it mentally, not like imagining, not like in your head trying to pretend. And maybe that could relate to it. I think the acquiring of this relates to the mental strength and pressure that you can exert on the world, which of course, you need your strong body. Your body is a resonator. As I said, you have to do those mental exercises with your mind. Really, yeah, so that's kind of how I think about all this. Comment down below if you can do these things. I was able to spin one of those little spinning wheels when I was like 14, and for some reason I can't do it anymore. I just, no matter how long I spend, I just can't seem to get it spinning. I was really good at it, so I know these powers exist. I've had the actual experience, so I know something there, and I'm really interested in developing it and all that. But yeah, so maybe if you have any experiences, tell me about that. But otherwise, I guess we just got to keep practicing, and eventually something will happen, hopefully. Goodbye, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a nice day.